Cozy traditions feel good. And that includes your fall makeup look. From lashes for days to enhancing a smoky eye with your favorite shade of brilliant eye brightener, Thrive Cosmetics is your go-to for completing every fall look. Plus, every product is 100% vegan, cruelty-free, and made with clean, skin-loving ingredients. Go to thrivecosmetics.com/cozy for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/cozy.
911, what's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm excellent.
We hear a lot about first responder suicide and the crisis when it comes to first responder suicide, but there's one aspect of this. It's a psychological concept that I have never heard anybody else talk about before, and it's actually called acquired capability for suicide. And what that means is it's basically how repeated exposure to pain and danger and violence lowers a person's fear of death. So I thought that we can kind of dive into that today.
I've never considered that. That's actually very interesting to think about the dynamic of where your fear reduction of death has been minimized because of the constant exposure to it, to where there's not that fear. There's not the fear of the unknown, to where it could lead to an easier out of doing that.
Yeah, and we all know that first responders and veterans, they're dying at rates by suicide that could outpace even line of duty deaths. And so I think that it's important for people to kind of look at this from a different angle, maybe one that is unique if we're not seeing those types of statistics improving. One major indicator that I hit on, and I actually shared a study with you, Clint, was looking into departments and seeing the department correlation with suicides, because it is my belief that the department morale and all of the things that take place within the department have a big indication when it comes to the likelihood of suicide being increased at any particular agency. And this isn't just my rhetoric. We've actually pulled the studies and shown that this actually needs to be looked into a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think that, no one wants to bear the weight of, looking internally as to this is why this is happening, or to say like we're responsible for that. But ultimately, I think that and we've seen that study is, I think our department influence has the biggest control, and that mindset when it comes down to it, of being able to help our officers, our even military, for every aspect of it. Because like I said, we don't want to look internally. We always look externally, but ultimately I think internally has a lot more of that mindset impact that we go through.
Yeah, because when we have all of the trauma that is associated to a possible increased risk of suicidal tendencies, we often blame it on that. You laid it out perfectly, because you said we often look exterior, right? So all of the calls that individual went on, or that one really traumatic one that individual might have gone on. But then when we consider that, and then all of the pressure that's surrounded upon a really bad agency, and I say bad in the sense of being able to see those things looking out, because I work with so many people who have identified all of the problems with admin and all of the problems with scheduling and promotions and getting passed over and scheduling issue, like all of that stuff. And I think that is the probably top level that needs to be researched the most.
Yeah, and I think of course it's always easier to look at that outside influence, and I think especially as cops, as first responders in general, we deflect, we change the story, we change the subject on what really is creating that dynamic, and we're not holding ourselves accountable for the actions of what we're doing as an individual department or as an agency as a whole.
The truth is that first responders are excellent at being able to hide their pain. However, one aspect of this is that most first responders will tell you that their hands are tied when it comes to being able to express their pain and the big angst that takes place in their day-to-day when it comes to department problems.
Yeah, because it's that, if we just shove everything into the closet and shut the door, you're not seeing the problem. You're hiding everything behind that door to where you're not actually dealing with the underlying issue of you have too much stuff and you keep storing it in there. Eventually that closet door is going to slam open and everything's going to spill out to where it's everywhere.
When it comes to an acquired capability for suicide, a lot of first responders inadvertently but naturally develop this through things like repeated exposure to traumatic scenes. You get very familiar with weapons. You have a high tolerance for fear, a high tolerance for risk, and then you also start to become emotionally desensitized.
That's exactly what I was just thinking with having that disconnect, that removing your emotion towards everything, and not only just in such a severe aspect of ranging from the suicide, but even when you come home and you have that disconnect, you have that emotional separation from your family, from life in general, you're going to start breeding that negative environment that no one wants to be in.
And I want to make this clear. This doesn't cause suicide, but what it does is it creates a really dangerous and super vulnerable situation when it comes time to somebody having all of this in combination with feeling hopelessness or depression or having any other untreated trauma-related issues.
Yeah, I think over time we start filling our schedules with that busy work, with us trying to, take the next shift, take the next promotion, take the next detail, whatever it may be. And we keep separating ourselves from that normal day-to-day life more and more because you're out trying to outpace all the emotions that you have going on.
And there are things that we can keep an eye out for. So let's say that you have somebody who goes from super expressive and really talkative to all of a sudden they're flat, they're detached, they're robotic. I have somebody that I check in on regularly, and anytime that I notice that his behavior is not the norm, his baseline level, or even above what is normally his baseline level, I will call him out. And the way that I call him out is I will simply say, "What's wrong with you?"
Yeah, it's good to hold each other accountable, and especially friends, partners, loved ones. It's not always easy to have that conversation, but be able to approach it and just say, "Hey, what's going on right now?"
You said it perfectly, how some people may overwork or they're volunteering excessively. And a lot of the times I see a lot of first responders who are using the job to outrun their pain.
I think that's a huge problem that a lot of, officers and first responders in general, they're always trying to do the next thing, the next push to work, to just keep busy, to not have to sit with their own thoughts and their emotions on whatever else is going on.
Last week, you had this very thing happen where dark humor actually hit a little bit different. And that joke felt a little bit heavier to you. It felt sharper to you, but it also felt revealing. So what you did was you paused time and you took that individual and you brought them to the side and you had a very candid, very encouraging and just supportive conversation with them. And you might not have realized it, but you were making an identification in that moment that could have been more important than you realize.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to recognize what's being said and what's not being said. And I think it's knowing and having those relationships with your officers, with your partners, to be able to say, "Hey, like, I get we have a dark humor. We joke around a lot, but there's something going on with this. What's going on? How are you?"
I think a lot of times we are so comfortable being comfortable that we don't want to ask uncomfortable questions. And I'm going to be very blunt because this is something I've had to ask people before, but it's important for us to normalize asking very direct questions. And if you feel the need, you will know within your instinctual abilities. Sometimes you might need to look at somebody in the eye and say, "Are you thinking about hurting yourself?" And I know how difficult that question is, having it had come out of my mouth in the past. And it's not going to plant a seed in somebody's mind. What it does is it actually saves lives.
Yeah, because if you actually ask that question, a majority of people are going to say, oh, she really cares. He really cares. Let's talk about this. What signs am I giving off that would lead them to believe that I was thinking that right now?
Yeah, it's either going to be that, a gut check, right? Or it's going to be like, shit, like my behavior is now showing externally so much I can't hide this anymore. And so when somebody is calling you out like that, number one, it opens up the door to you knowing that you're not in that space alone anymore.
Yeah, and you want to be able to bridge that gap. And whether they want to sit down and talk with you about that then, they want to approach you in the future, or they're saying, hey, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to go talk to somebody.
The most important thing, the most important takeaway that I hope that you get from this episode is to know that the number one driver of suicide is actually isolation. So when we remove isolation wherever possible, we could do that through very small acts of connection, just something that helps to interrupt that shame spiral in somebody. That is what makes all of the difference.
Having those conversations, being able to just do that pattern interrupt and really get outside of our comfort zone is so important, whether it's a stranger or someone that you're close to.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.
With the state of today's economy, it's more important than ever to invest in products that last for years to come. As the seasons shift and get cooler, make sure your closet is stocked with durable layers that stand the test of time from American Giant. American Giant's clothes work harder and are wearable season after season. Their greatest hoodie ever made is made from the highest quality materials that are cut and sewn right here in the United States. So you're investing right back in your local community. Choosing American Giant means taking a stand for American manufacturing and hardworking Americans, something other mega corporations don't care about. From fleece to knit, all in a range of colors for versatile daily wear, American Giant delivers everyday pieces designed for everyday life. Feel the difference of quality, made-to-last clothes from American Giant. Get 20% off your first order with code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com. That's 20% off your first order at american-giant.com with code STAPLE20.